Bugün sizlere hitap etmek, böyle seçkin bir gruba hitap etmek benim için bir şereftir. Birçok yabancı konuğumuz olduğu için konuşmamı İngilizce yapacağım. So I'm going to switch to English now. I was asked to talk about the investment potential for food packaging industry in developing countries. First of all, I would like to start by presenting myself and who we are. So Bell Holding is a business-to-business group which has been active in packaging and business services. We've also had several joint ventures, still have with leading multinational companies in Turkey. So on the packaging side, Bell Packaging Group has 58 and plus years of experience in packaging in Turkey. We employ a little bit over 800 people, 7 plants. We are market leader in more or less all the sectors where we're present. Not going to go into too many details because just want to briefly present our group. We operate under several brands. You may be familiar with some of these: Senapa Stampa, Intercap, Tulipak, and Perfect Tube. So our products are in plastic, and this is why we're here today, but we are also present in laminated tubes and in aluminum tubes and aerosol cans. And we serve several sectors, and food, of course, is one of them. I've listed here our key competencies, customer focus being the main one of them, and trying to achieve technology leadership. I'm just going to show you some of our products: plastic bottles, caps and closures, thin wall tubs and lids, aluminum tubes, and laminate tubes, and aerosol cans. And, sorry. Yeah, okay. So, if we, after this brief introduction, if we go now to our main subject, which is developing and emerging countries and the potential they have. I'm not going to go into many figures. I just want to concentrate a little bit because I also have very little time available. I want to concentrate on some important or what I consider important trends and macro trends. So first of all, developing and emerging countries are no longer the future, but very much the present today. When we look at several indicators, for instance, their share of the world GDP, the share that emerging markets have in the GDP growth, in the global GDP growth, the share they have in world trade today, and the share of multinational businesses in terms of sales and even up to a certain point contribution, developing and emerging countries in a lot of cases are now a very, very significant part, and therefore they've become a replaceable part of world economy. So why is this happening? Or why has this happened? Now, clearly, what everybody knows and looks at is population growth, and developing and emerging markets still have a fairly important population growth and birth rates and so on. But the population growth itself, if it's not accompanied by some of these other elements, would not by itself justify the growth in these markets. This population growth has been accompanied by very rapid urbanization. And as you know, a couple of years ago, the percentage of the world population that lives in cities as opposed to rural areas has, for the first time in the history of humanity, gone above 50%. So there are more people in the world today living in cities than in rural areas. At the same time, the growth of emerging markets, the economic growth of emerging markets has brought forward an expansion of their middle classes. Their economic growth has been in part due to finally, let's say, not ideology-driven economic macro management, but practical, objective, and intelligent macroeconomic management in those countries. So their economies have developed, and this has been accompanied by a significant growth in the middle class. Again, in those countries, and we can see it here in particular in Turkey, but it's not exclusive to Turkey, organized trade has also developed significantly. Now, organized trade is the multiples, the Walmarts, that has been talked about. Now, Walmart is, of course, a phenomenon in the US, but organized trade has developed significantly in Turkey. Hypermarkets, which used to be perhaps just in big city like Istanbul or Ankara, now you have hypermarkets in all provincial cities, and you don't have only one, but several. So all these elements, together, of course, with population growth, have the result that the potential for packaged goods, fast-moving consumer goods, packaged goods, is huge. It has developed, but it's still huge. So there is a multiplying factor, which is several times the factor which would be implied just by the population growth. In rural areas, as you know, goods are traded and are sold. But traditionally in the past, they were not necessarily in packaged form. In particular, for instance, as far as food is concerned. Now, when we talk about packaged goods, the way we look at it at Bell, I mean, there are four main categories that we look at, which is home care, personal care, health, pharma, and food. Today, of course, we're concentrating on food, and food has got some particularities. The other sectors, when they develop, the needs that have been created can be covered more easily than food by importing finished goods. But food, as I'm going to mention now, has got some particularities. Just to finish off on what I was saying before, one very important sector for Turkey, which is yogurt, for instance, up to fairly recently, I think up to at least 10 years ago, but perhaps even less, 50% or more of the yogurt consumed in Turkey was sold in an unpackaged form. Now, of course, we're all packaging companies, so we look at potential of packaged goods because we produce the packaging. So what is so special about food products and food markets compared to other fast-moving consumer goods, which would make their investment potential perhaps slightly different? First of all, I mean, these are all known facts. I'm not going to dwell too much on them. First of all, food products do not travel as easily as other fast-moving consumer goods. And they don't travel very easily on long distances. They are perishable, clearly. They're more susceptible to heat, humidity, so they can spoil during traveling. Here I'm talking, if you'll excuse me, our previous speaker has talked about the travel of agricultural products. I'm talking, my focus is mostly on packaged food. Obviously, agricultural products, so just after harvest, have got the same issues, only, of course, much more important in their case. Even though some agricultural products travel long distances, bananas are one that come to mind, and we've managed to make them travel long distances successfully. But still, there are issues that have to be confronted, and these issues are particular to food. Apart from that, food products tend to be more regulated than non-food products. Their trade tends to be a little bit more restricted. There are objective and not so objective reasons for that. Clearly, ministries of agriculture, ministries of health, for that matter, have got the duty to protect the health of the population of a particular country. And food is one of those important sectors where when you make a mistake, it can have big repercussions and clearly, of course, then political effect. So there tends to be much more regulation as far as food is concerned. And we see it all the time. Sometimes the importation of particular types of foods are forbidden, restricted, and so on and so forth. Clearly, there is a non-objective part of it. Farmers tend to represent big vote potential. So protecting farmers is always a political issue. And by restricting the trade in food products, countries also protect their farmers. So as a result of that, food and packaged food tends to have homegrown champions. Although there are big multinationals in foods, when you look then at various countries, you will see that each one has developed local champions, and clearly they are very competitive. They, they tend to be successful companies, and this in itself clearly is also a particularity for the food markets, and makes perhaps the competition more difficult as a result. So as a result of that, markets of food products, and again, packaged food products, non-packaged clearly even more, are less open to imports. And when we look at Turkey, we can see it as a case in point, because Turkey has an extremely liberal international trade condition. It is part of, or it has signed a customs union treaty with the EU, so non-food products can come in as freely as possible. There are no duties whatsoever for products coming from the EU, very low duties for products coming from outside the EU. But food is not part of it. Food is still not part, and packaged foods, by and large, are still not part of this custom union. So food products and packaged food products are less open to imports in Turkey. But similar situations will exist in most emerging and developing countries. I don't want to go into examples for each one of them, but a similar situation exists in the other markets. So I'm slowly coming to investment and why there is a need for investment. So food packaging as well can be imported. At that point of view, it's an industrial product, so there are no barriers, no particular barriers to importing food. So why not import? Why produce locally in emerging and developing markets? First of all, of course, clearly, transportation costs are always an issue. They need to be mentioned here. It's when you have a shorter supply chain, you are more competitive. This changes from type of packaging to type of packaging. Clearly, bottles are almost impossible to transport competitively over long distances, but other packaging material, flexibles, are easier to transport. But then there is the complexity. You have a local language need. The complexity is added by the fact that you may have local sizes. There is a culture, always a culture behind food products. So particular types, sizes. I mean, we mentioned yogurt. Yogurt, of course, is a particularity of Turkey. Yogurt is consumed in a certain way in Turkey. It's usually consumed fresh. It's almost a daily purchase for families. That in turn means that yogurt packaging needs to have certain sizes, which may not be relevant to other countries. Clearly then, because of all the supervision and oversight of ministries, of governments, plant certifications are necessary. Customers demand just-in-time delivery. They want to have small lot orders, and therefore having a local presence in developing and emerging markets as opposed to just relying on importing and distribution makes a lot more sense. And then, of course, I didn't put it there, but clearly, because developing and emerging markets have now become fairly large markets in their own size, and I'm not talking only about China, but also Turkey, clearly Brazil, Indonesia, India, and so on. They represent volumes that are now better served by local production than just by import. And a mixture can also be looked at. So the potential for investment in food packaging in developing emerging markets is considerable. But however, usually when we look at these issues, we tend to have a fairly distorted view. We feel that the only companies that will invest will be the European and American companies, so from developed markets into developing markets. But we can see that this is no longer the case. I mean, the homegrown champions are now doing investments and acquisitions in other countries, also in developed countries. I mean, we hear the acquisitions that Turkish companies are doing in Italy, in Spain, in the rest of the EU. But local champions are also investing in other developing and emerging markets. So there is a potential and a possibility for packaging companies to follow their customers and also invest and follow them in those other countries. However, clearly everything is not roses, and there are other important points to consider. First of all, emerging markets are already quite sophisticated. Again, Turkey is a case in point. There is a variety. Consumers have become demanding. They want variety is one of them. Tastes may be changing with time. What our parents' generation were used to eating, even for breakfast, is no longer necessarily valid to what our children are eating for breakfast. So changes tastes are changing over generations. Standards, of course, are already very high. But, and here I want to refer also to our previous speaker and thank him for having raised it, there is very tough competition, often destructive competition. So coming in and saying, oh, everybody's doing this, I'll do it as well, this is not the right way to decide on a new investment, at least in my view. Customers in developing and emerging markets are extremely, perhaps even more than in developed markets, demanding in terms of service. Clearly, quality is now a world standard. In Turkey now we have the development of BRC standards, which are the norm in developed countries, and the same goes everywhere. So quality standards are now on a global scale. And as I said, very tough competition on price. However, on the positive side, most developing countries have adapted their legal infrastructure to joining the global economy. So going there, setting up shop, building a plant, buying a company, investing is relatively easy. Those markets are open to investment. So the key for success, first of all, clearly, just to repeat myself, I believe the investment opportunities for food packaging are big. This is still a growing market in developing emerging markets and will continue to be so for a considerable period of time because we're still in the catching up phase in terms of per capita consumption, as our previous speaker has also mentioned. However, if anybody feels that they can just enter a market and bring in additional capacity to compete head-on with what everybody else is doing, that is a recipe probably for disaster. Innovation is key. Innovation is also requested by the customers because they need to differentiate, because they need to be greener, because everybody is in on the sustainability issue. So our customers are asking us to bring them new ideas, both in their battle for sustainability, but also in their battle on the marketplace for market share. And as you know, packaging, after all, together with price and product, is one of the key components of success in fast-moving consumer goods. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all an interesting Congress. Thank you.